Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar, Building a Resilient Culture with Australia's 2020 Great Places to Work winners, Interactive, SafetyCulture, and BPAY. I'm so excited for this conversation. And today we will be here to talk about resiliency. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's been to focus on what's most important, our people. Designing and curating employee experiences, programs, and strategic initiatives has allowed these intentional efforts to result in the opportunity to learn from 3 of Australia's Great Places to Work winners. Collectively in this group, there is an impressive 54 years of experience in people, culture, and talent. Talk about starting off with some impressive stats. Without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. First up, we have Merylee Crockett, who's the Director of People and Culture at Interactive and has led the team to become this year's #1 best place to work in Australia. What you didn't know about Merylee is she's passionate about learning and has recently taken up golf lessons to improve the gender diversity on the corporate golf days without adding to the handicap. Welcome, Merylee. Next up, we have Terlya Hunt, and she's People Experience Manager at SafetyCulture, the 4th best place to work and one of Australia's greatest unicorn startups. They were recently valued $1.3 billion earlier this year. What you didn't know about Terlya, she's an avid traveler and has traveled to over 53 countries. Welcome, T.
Thanks, excited to be here.
Next up, we have leading people and culture at BPAY for over 13 years, Lucy Lithgow. And she's the General Manager of People and Culture, and BPAY is the 5th best place to work in Australia. What you didn't know about Lucy is that she started out working as a dancer before she realized it wasn't the gig for her. Welcome, Lucy, and I have to ask, what type of dance did you do?
Thank you, Nadine, and hello, everyone. I actually learnt classical ballet, but my passion is actually in contemporary and modern dance, so I left the classical behind when I got to a certain age.
That's amazing. Yeah, so good. And lastly, my name's Nadine, and I'll be your host for today. I head up People and Culture and Talent at Flair. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Our goal with this thought leadership series is to build a supportive community of people and culture leaders that can learn with and from each other. We encourage you to join us anytime. You can, before we kick off into the questions, you can submit your questions for the panel in the handy dandy question panel. We'll answer them at the end. Big thanks to everyone who's pre-submitted your questions. We've received about 30 responses, which has been hugely valuable, and we've incorporated them in our those themes in our session today. Okay, let's get started. Merylee, I'd love to start with you, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your role.
Sure. Oh, hang on, I think I'm on mute. Great.
No, I can hear you. Yeah.
Terrific. Great. Look, I'm responsible for the people and culture function, and we have a very OD focused team. So ultimately, we look at our role as being creating a great place where talent can thrive and where we can continue to attract some of the best talent into the business. I'm also the executive sponsor on a number of business transformation programs in the workplace. And the one I'm probably most excited about is our Blueprint for Better program, which is our sustainability strategy.
Oh, amazing. So maybe you can tell me a little bit more of like an insider scoop into what the culture and what that looks like at Interactive.
Sure. It's always interesting, isn't it, when you're thinking about what it's like on the inside versus you know, what your perspective from external. But our culture is most definitely something special. So working with us is it's quite personal. So there's an immense human element to the way that we operate. And a real care factor. So we've got quite a familiar or a very informal culture. We spend a lot of time trying to help people really connect and get to know each other. we encourage people really to just be themselves. So we, our brand is built around, or our employer brand is built around bringing your plus. So what is it that is unique to you? Because everyone here brings something unique and special, and that's what makes the culture so interesting. So we're also very ambitious. Like tea, we're a fast-growing business, although there's some very impressive stats there. So we're very ambitious, but we're low on ego, which I think is a nice counterbalance. And because we've got a big engineering base or a large technical team, we've got a huge curiosity and a real passion for service. So those things really come together and describe what it's like to work at Interactive.
Awesome. And, getting to the top of, the list in terms of employer of choice and best place to work, can you give us a little bit more insight into what that journey's been?
Yes, well, we're a 30-year-old business, so we've been around for quite some time, but we decided to enter a Great Place to Work this year because we have quite an understated brand in the marketplace, and it was a strategy for us to really raise the profile in the market and make sure that people really got a sense of who Interactive was and what it was like to work for, and that we became part of the list for people to consider in terms of potential employers. And let's face it, we all know it's a tough market when you're hiring great talent. And most importantly, we really wanted to make sure that we felt we have a great place to work, and we felt that our people deserved the pride that comes from some external acknowledgement in an award that like this one.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to get into that a little bit deeper. But for now, Terlya, I'd love to hear your sort of snapshot in terms of what your role looks like and what sort of a day-to-day and responsibilities that you have.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I guess firstly, for those of you that might not know a bit about SafetyCulture, we are an Australian tech company, and we're on a mission to get safety and quality into the hands of every worker around the world. And my role in all of this is really about building a workplace where people can do their best work and also have an incredible experience and time doing it. And in terms of my day-to-day, what this looks like, I'm a business partner for our amazing go-to-market team. So really helping those teams scale and building an environment where they all thrive. And additionally, I look after the employee experience. And what that means is, really looking at the journey an employee has across their experience at SafetyCulture, and looking at all of those touch points and how we can really make it an enjoyable experience, which means so many things from, our onboarding boot camp to, the way we deliver learning and disc profiles, and how we have feedback and development in our organization, and everywhere to, exit interviews and having a good experience right from the start to the finish.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so critical to create that experience from start to finish. How would you describe the culture at SafetyCulture?
Yeah, so I think, the best way to describe our culture is probably by our values, because these are really the things that make us us. And I think, we've scaled so much over the last, 3.5 years that I've been here. And we are, the sum parts of every one of the amazing people at SafetyCulture. And we have so many different cultures as part of that. But the one thing that really binds us together is our values, and our values were actually created by the people at SafetyCulture. So I think they're a really good representation of what we're like. So our first value is think customer, and this is so true about our organization. We have customers at the heart of everything we do, and we're really a mission-based team, and you really feel that energy when you work here. And our second value is better as a team, and that also has just felt so strongly. Like, we're so collaborative in what we do. People really show up for each other, and like Merylee was saying, really bring their full self to work, and they've really, putting the human into what they do. Our third one is be bold, bring action, and this is very much for us, keeping that startup agility and empowering people to own things and improve things and to iterate and really own that. And then our last value is about being open, honest, and always. So that transparency piece, and also, that radical and candor environment where we are giving each other feedback and, helping each other be better each day. So I think those things really describe a lot of what it's like to be at SafetyCulture, plus all the incredible people that make it what it is every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what's the journey been like to becoming a Best Place to Work winner?
Yeah, I love this question, and I think it's been a really interesting journey for us. And I think if I answer that question in kind of two parts, like internally, I think that the journey for us to become a best place to work has really been about listening to our people and our customers in building an amazing product, but also building a great workplace. So really, we learn so much every day from the people who work there, and we wouldn't be where we are without that. And I think, secondly, externally, similar to Merylee was saying, actually, when I first started at SafetyCulture, not many people knew who we were, and the outside world, safety and quality might not sound that sexy. So we did really seemingly, have this brand. So really, a big part of the journey was about helping people outside of our company really connect with why what we do each day is so important. Like, we have an incredible mission that has a big ability to impact so many lives. So it was really giving people a sense of that and what it's like to work here each day. And also, just testimony to the amazing people that work here each day. So really great to see that external recognition to kind of really give everyone at SafetyCulture that sense of pride.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Lucy, over to you. I'd love to get a snapshot of your impact and role and scope over at BPAY.
Okay, great. So I head up People and Culture at BPAY Group and report directly to our CEO. And essentially, I'm responsible for ensuring that we have the culture and capabilities we need to drive our business strategy. Also working very closely with John, the CEO, to hold our leaders accountable for creating an environment similar to what T was alluding to, where our people enjoy coming to work and give their best every day. I have an awesome team, and together we cover all the things that most generalist HR teams do. But no matter what we're doing, we aim to constantly look for ways to enhance the experience of our people and to make life simpler for them. So that's BPAY's purpose, simply to make life simpler, and we carry that forward in everything that we do as well.
That's awesome. And what's the culture like? Give us sort of a rundown of how that shapes and takes place.
Okay, certainly. Well, I think it's awesome. Of course, I'm not biased here at all. But one of the things that stands out for me is that there is generally a high level of trust within BPAY. People are empowered to be curious and recommend new ways of doing things. It's fun. We're highly supportive and collaborative. And I can honestly say that our people are at the forefront of our minds when we're making decisions at that leadership team level.
That's awesome. And would love to get a sort of snapshot and description of the journey that you guys have been on to become a best place to work winner.
Okay, well, it didn't happen overnight. That's
no, definitely not.
It's one of those things that does take a little bit of work and effort. We were thrilled. I mean, this is our first year for entering, and we were thrilled to even be named as the best place to work. So Merylee, if this is your first year and you've gone straight to #1, that is an awesome, fantastic achievement. Essentially, to what T was saying, it's about continually listening to our people, acting on their feedback, and working with them to create and evolve our culture to where we want it to be. So that's essentially what it is in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to hear and sort of go around the table again in terms of a program or initiative that you're most proud of. Merylee, I know that you mentioned sort of the blueprint when it came to sustainability, but is there anything else that you'd want to call out in terms of some really great work that you've done?
Yeah, look, I think the thing that's really impacted our business most and that I'm most proud of is really articulating our purpose and becoming a really purpose-led organisation. I think that was a very big part of, what was recognised or acknowledged through the Great Place to Work program. And we did that over the last kind of 12 months or so, and we engaged, quite a few hundreds of our team members. We connected with our customers and our partners and ultimately landed our purpose, which is to keep technology human, which is quite an unusual, I think, purpose within our industry, and one that really articulates who we are and what we stand for really clearly. And it's not only a reflection of who we've always been, but it's also something very much worth fighting for in the future and making sure that no matter what, that we continue to keep a really human element. And we've spent a lot of time really making sure that we bring this to life. I don't know if people have seen our Keep Technology Human video that's been on the web and posted on social media, but it was a great articulation where we asked the family members of our employees to really talk about our team, whether it was someone's daughter or husband or father, and it was a really nice way of giving a very personal articulation of the great things that our people do. But I think there's been no greater reflection of this than during the last 6 months, the way we've all lived. It's been a real opportunity for us to demonstrate what it really means to be human as an organisation, and I think a crisis of any kind demonstrates to the world who you really are. And so for us, it's been an opportunity for our executive team and our leaders to really stay very connected to people. And we've made phone calls to each person individually, particularly during this second phase of Melbourne lockdown, just to see how people are and how their family is, and to understand how best we can support people. And one of the executives mentioned to me the other day that he thinks more out of those phone calls and perhaps the people that he called, because it was just simply applying the time to care was really rewarding. And we've done a number of other things to really bring this to life. So we've encouraged our leaders to really understand what their purpose is and how they help their team contribute, and what legacy they leave behind. And that's a really strong feature in our leadership program, is being purpose-led as a leader. For our team, we run a program called Finding Meaning at Work, which is really about understanding how you make a difference and what's worth getting out of bed for every morning and coming to work. And we regularly share stories from our customers around the impact that we're having for our customers, so that you can see in a very simple way around how what we do really matters. And I could go on and on about the different ways that we brought purpose to life, but for me, that's something that's been very strong within our culture. It guides our decision making, and it really, I think, is a very human characteristic that really sets us apart.
That's awesome. Terlya, would love to know a program or initiative that you're really proud of.
Yeah, I think one of the initiatives that I'm most proud of, because I also think it's super unique to SafetyCulture and part of our DNA, is our Ship It Week. So our Ship It Week is where we fly all of our employees across the globe together for a whole week of customers, keynotes, learning, a hackathon, collaboration, connection, and so much more. And I think, what we're really trying to solve by having this week was, as we scaled, we really wanted to make sure that people really had a sense of why we were here and really connected to what we were here to do. So the week was, the key messages for that week were really about instilling that the customer is at the heart of what we do, and what we build together really matters. And that really trying to get aligned with everybody and giving them confidence in where we were today, reflecting on how much we've achieved and what was ahead, and giving that sense of excitement. And then also, the other key component was the hackathon, where, what we really want to achieve with that is when people are given a time frame and work with people that they don't normally, the things that they can come up with together are truly amazing. And, the impact of this is that, last year we all went to Wellington, and this year was a bit of a spanner in the works with COVID, but last year, the 28 projects that we had in our hackathon, 12 of them were actually shipped straight to our customers, 5 are on the roadmap, and 12 kind of served as prototypes. And I think, this really has a huge impact on our customers and brings so much value. And even if I think about internally, like I mentioned before, our values were a result of this event. We've built our own intranet as part of our event, and we've also built our own recognition tool, which is like a Slack bot that helps everyone give shout outs to each other. So I think, the impact has been phenomenal. And, the learning from it's really that, if you know as a business what you care about, and you have a really good understanding of what you want to communicate to your staff, that, the energy kind of flows where the intention goes. So I think that's an initiative that I'm quite proud of, and I think it's very unique. And we have on our SafetyCulture YouTube channel the videos of the week, so you can really get a sense of what it's like.
Yeah, and those videos look like you have no fun at all. That's awesome. Over to you, Lucy. Is there a specific like program or initiative that you're really proud of?
Yes, I look at the initiative, I suppose, that I'm most proud of is the cultural transformation journey that we've been on over the last 3 to 4 years. So looking where we are today and where we were 4 years ago, I'm amazed at what we've achieved and the impact it's had on our people and engagement levels. So just to give you a snippet, back in 2016, engagement was good, around 70%, but then it moved to 74, 84, 93 last year, and then 92% this year. So some really amazing results, which are a testament to everything that we're doing with our people. Now, look, I could speak all day on this, but I won't because I know time limit. But what I want to share specifically was, what we did around building trust, because that's something that I feel is critical in driving a resilient culture. So back in 2016, we actually took some time to reflect on, who we were and how we were doing things, and we realised, we had a light bulb moment. We realised that we were pretty paternalistic in our approach with our people. Look, don't get me wrong, it was coming from a good place, but we quickly realised that we weren't necessarily treating our people like adults. And so, when we moved to an activity-based working environment, it gave us a wonderful opportunity to do something impactful around this. So we designed our new office so that it provided multiple workspaces. And importantly and critical to driving this culture of trust and empowerment, we made the decision to allow our people to choose where they worked or sat for the day. So this, of course, has implications for leaders who are used to having people around them, but that's another story for another day. So not only have we given our people choice about where they will do their best work for the day, but we also threw out our dress code and now trust our people to make the right decision about what they're going to wear based on their day. We also got rid of the requirement that's in many awards and enterprise agreements requiring people to produce a medical certificate if they've got the day off or if they've taken the day off due to illness or whatever. Again, we trust our people to do the right thing by us. And if that trust is broken or we realise there's a pattern of behaviour that's concerning, then we will just talk to that individual. Another initiative we implemented, and one that's had a massive impact, is with regards to our recognition program. So basically, everyone's been given access to the recognition budget so that they can now recognise and reward a colleague or a peer for going above and beyond. Historically, that was something that we left to our leaders only, but now everyone can get involved, and our people were amazed that we were actually going to trust them with this budget. So they're just some of the things that we've done to drive trust within BPAY, and which I believe really helped us to foster that resilient culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's great. Cool. Merylee, in terms of like at Interactive being the #1 place to work this year, you've led people and culture over there for 10 years. So how do you define a resilient culture, and like how can we think about approaching it?
Yeah, look, I think a resilient culture is one that really thrives in the face of adversity and where people keep going no matter how tough it becomes, and where you're prepared to be vulnerable and acknowledge that you don't have all the answers, but you're certainly willing to listen and learn. And we've heard both Lucy and T talk about, how important it is to listen and learn from your people. We've had some interesting experiences over the last 6 months, obviously around the world, but for our business, part of our business is we run a business continuity facility. And so we've had, oftentimes more customers than we've had staff on site running their business from our facility over the last 6 months. And when you're in a crisis, the one thing you really want is to be around people who are calm and who care immensely. And I think that's been really demonstrated, and it's how our culture's really come to the fore over this time. But if I think around resilience, I think it's very hard to uncouple resilience from wellbeing. I think the two are intricately linked. And when we started to talk about wellbeing as an organisation a few years ago, there was a lot of confusion about what we meant. So we spent some time defining what we mean by wellbeing, and resilience is actually a part of that. And there are 5 key areas or 5 areas that really for us define what we mean when we're talking about wellbeing. The first is really starts with purpose, knowing your why, you know, and what you believe in, what matters to you, and what's worth getting out of bed for in the morning. The second area for us is around safety and making sure that we really describe our commitment and live up to our commitment to keep each other safe. And I'm not just talking about physical safety, I'm also talking about psychological safety, which we invest a lot into as well. The third area is around connection, and quite simply, we just think we're better together. And it's been a very interesting time staying connected when we're apart. The fourth area is around health, both physical, financial, and particularly mental health. And then the fifth aspect for us when we define wellbeing is actually resilience, so that ability to cope in adversity and to learn from it. So that's how we think about resilience as a culture. And as I said, it's very intricately linked with wellbeing, and it's hard to be a resilient culture, I feel, unless you're really focused on all 5 areas equally.
Yeah, definitely. And I heard it was just last week that someone sort of described resiliency as being a muscle, and you need to train, foster, and support and continue that. And so, especially a global pandemic, it definitely brings that to light for sure. Lucy, like Merylee, you've been leading HR, people and culture for over a decade, 13 years at BPAY specifically. So what have you learned along the way? And like more specifically, especially when it comes to your approach with resiliency.
Yeah. Okay, so I've learned a lot over my career, but I suppose one of the biggest learnings for me has been the fact that no matter how hard you try, HR teams alone can't change a culture. You need the support and the buy-in of the CEO and leaders across the business, because without them, you know, what you're proposing, it will be really difficult to get any traction. We really have built up a lot of trust with our leaders over the years, and this came in handy when we first started working remotely. And it sort of alludes to what Merylee was saying about, you know, how we're going to drive resilience and you know, through deeper connections and so forth. And one of our primary concerns was that some of our people could start feeling helpless, or a sense of helplessness, really quickly, given what we were hearing in the news and given the fact that some people were isolated from friends and families. So we really worked with our leaders, over Zoom of course, to ensure that they felt equipped to manage their teams and lead their teams in this new remote working environment. We did things like encourage them to put in place rituals to keep the team connected and feeling as if they belonged to something. We also encouraged them to resist the urge to jump in and control things, which is a tendency many of us have when we're stressed or in crisis mode. And to actually empower their people and trust them to get on with their work, so that they felt that there was something in their life that they could control. Because, you know, to be honest, there was a lot that we couldn't control at that time, especially, you know, in the early months. And finally, we encouraged leaders to provide their teams with clarity on where they could actually add value, so that they knew that there was a contribution that they could make. So I truly believe that BPAY is an agile and resilient organisation pre-COVID. But it was certainly beneficial to sort of stop and pause and think about how we could actually provide additional support to our leaders and remind them of what they could be doing to better support their people and drive resilience within a team, especially when we moved into lockdown.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And Terlya, SafetyCulture, it's no secret you guys have experienced incredible growth. I think I heard a fact of over the last, within 6 months, there was 150 employees hired. For some quick math, that's the equivalent of 1 employee every working day for 6 months straight. Great work. But would love to get sort of your stance. Like, when a business rapidly grows like this, the cultural dynamics can shift at, the same pace that you're growing at, and really have a dramatic change. So what has building a culture of resilience meant for SafetyCulture?
Yeah, firstly, I really love the definition before that Merylee gave. I think that's definitely true. And if I think about that definition, I think there's probably about like 3 things I can think of that I think has really helped SafetyCulture be resilient through our periods of growth. And I think the first one is being really purpose driven and holding the mission and the customer at the heart of everything that we do. And, you know, even from our very beginning, when it was just people in a garage in Townsville, and, you know, times weren't easy and it was tough, you know, the thing that really kept them going each day was the emotional connection to what we do, and, you know, the belief and the drive that what we're doing really has an impact of everyone that uses our product. And I think, you know, similar to how I spoke about our Ship It event before, that's one example of how we try to bring that every day. And we also, you know, bring customers in to speak with our staff, so they can actually understand, you know, firsthand how our product impacts our customers. So I think that's been one real driving force in having a resilient culture, that, you know, things might change and things might go up and down, but, you know, really having that purpose to lead you through tough times is really important. The second thing I think is really values, and I kind of alluded to it earlier as well. I think, you know, we have grown so much and so fast, and, you know, our values really serve as a guide to like take us through these times. And, you know, an example of this is that, you know, during our interview process, we actually have a culture ad interview, and part of that is structured around our values and really asking questions about how people can add and bring something and contribute to these values. And I think that's a really important part about scaling and keeping that resiliency. And then I think the last thing that I think we've done really well with is incorporating a bit of play into work. You know, we spend so much time at work, and it's really important to celebrate along the way. It's so easy to get caught up in growing and, you know, thinking about what's next, but it's equally as important. Like, we just need to stop and take that time to celebrate and be really intentional about it. So, you know, I think we do a really good job of that, and you can probably see in our SafetyCulture Instagram live that we definitely, you know, have a lot of events and definitely stop and incorporate a bit of play into our work.
Yeah, which is so important. And I think that culture add too is a really key point instead of a culture fit. And so how are you actually bringing that human element and whole self to work to really allow people to add their flavor and make an impact? Great. So this question was pre-submitted, and it's from the audience, and both from Kathy and Felicity. Thank you for submitting that. Merylee, I'd love to direct this over to you. They both said, I'm keen to hear how organizational resilience is defined and how it's measured.
Sure. Well, I've talked a little about this already in terms of how we define wellbeing and resilience. And I really love the work of Lucy Hone. If people haven't heard of her, she's a resilience researcher out of New Zealand. And she talks about resilience really being defined as a culture where people can adapt to adversity and learn from it. And we think very much the same way in terms of the experiences that we've had. And I think the measurement question is a bit tougher. There's no one way to measure resilience. I think it really depends on your culture and you know, the stage of life cycle as well in terms of the maturity of your business. But there's a couple of ways that I thought would be useful sharing some of the things that we've done. The first is a couple of years ago, we really asked ourselves the question, why do people stay at Interactive, and what is it that enables them to perform? So they stay for a long time and they perform. If we could understand, you know, what the magic formula was in that one, that surely would help us in both the attraction and the retention of talent. And we identified a number of really interesting experience factors, but what was most interesting was that there were 4 characteristics in individuals that would predict whether someone would stay with the business and whether they would perform. And those 4 characteristics were leadership, so that they had a sense of self-leadership. They were highly adaptable to change, no surprise, for probably the case for all of our businesses. They had this immense curiosity and this desire and willingness to learn. And lo and behold, the 4th factor was they were resilient. So resilience has been really important to us, and it's a factor that we measure as when people come into the organisation, particularly around utilisation of our assessment tools. The other way we've thought about resilience and how to measure this is we've run our leaders, we took a cross-section of our leaders and looked at how do we support them both in terms of their resilience and their well-being as leaders. And we took a group of leaders for a 3-month program, and they were from one of our fastest growing teams. and they participated in some assessments and some coaching. And what was interesting, there were some interesting individual findings, but what was really interesting for the group was there was a real theme in terms of the way that they operated, and they found that they were committed to work, maybe too much so, and at the expense of their personal life. And the key difficulty they had was transitioning from home to work, and transitioning out of work, mum or dad, into home, and being able to, I guess, be the mum or dad that they wanted to be when they got home and they were, accosted by the kids, or being the partner that they felt was, they wanted to be, and to not have their mind on a piece of work that they could have been completing. And for us, that was really not sustainable for people to work productively, but at the expense of their personal lives. So there's some really interesting things you can do around that. If people don't know Adam Fraser, he does some really interesting work around the third space and how you go through that transition from home to work. But I think nothing is more important, particularly in this period that we're in right now, than hope, and making sure that in the midst of the difficulty that we're all going through, that you protect your resilience by being aware of and really sharing stories of hope with people, which has been a real initiative that we've focused on significantly over this period.
Yeah, and that's especially in the time, even the last snapshot of the last 6-7 months, to share, hope, gratitude, and really focusing in on those aspects. It's helped, personally helped me a lot. Another pre-submitted question from the audience, and this one's actually coming from a co-founder and president. Thank you for your question. And Lucy, I'd love to hear your approach on this. So when staff are feeling really down and they've reached rock bottom for various reasons, how do you build a culture of resilience, get them motivated, and really help get that mind shift going and moving in the right direction?
Okay, sure. This is certainly not an easy task, especially if the whole team or a large proportion of the business is at rock bottom. But look, I would suggest that as a first step, you need to truly understand what's happening or what's been happening and why people are feeling so down or demotivated before even attempting to start to build a culture of resilience. There are some questions that you can certainly ask yourself. For example, what is it about the culture that doesn't appear to be working? What is going on that doesn't allow people to feel trusted or empowered to think creatively or be bold? If people aren't bouncing back from adversity quickly, for example, then what's stopping them? Is there a culture of blame, or mistakes or failures not tolerated, for example? Have people simply given up on being bold because mistakes are overly scrutinised or success is ignored? And is the way in which feedback is given soul-destroying, rather than what it should be, which is future-focused and aimed at helping them be more successful in the future? So what I'm trying to say here is that don't assume that the problem lies with the individual members of your team or your business. And a good starting point is to actually listen. I keep saying this, but listening to your people is really, really important about what's going on and what they feel could be improved, because a demotivated workforce could very well be due in large part to the environment that the leaders have unwittingly created themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If that's helped answer.
Yeah, no, totally. Is there anything else that T or Merylee you'd add to that as well? I mean, it's a great answer. So, nope. Okay. No. So pivoting a little bit into people first strategies and engagement, especially within this new remote work and way that we're having to operate. So Terlya, I'd love to hear what people first initiatives you're currently working on. And then sort of the next step would be, how are you doing that during a pandemic?
Absolutely. One thing I do want to add actually is that there seems to be some themes coming out, Merylee, because we also love Dr. Lucy Hone, and we had her come and deliver a webinar to our staff actually. So it's definitely some little themes popping up. Yeah, so in terms of some people first initiatives that we're currently working on, I feel like there's so many I could talk about, but I will try and focus in on the ones that are specific to, right now. And I think one thing, myself and our team really focused on during this time was we really wanted to try and help, boost morale and keep our employees healthy, both kind of mentally and physically. So some specific things that we've done is we kind of revamped our EAP. So we launched a new EAP, and it's actually also an app as well to kind of help people prioritize that kind of mental fitness. It also extended it to people in their kind of like immediate household and family as well, to kind of, you know, recognize that, you know, the people that you're around and you live with also have, you know, a big impact on your mental well-being as well. So that was a really big thing that we did. And we my manager is actually she volunteered for Lifeline for a lot of years and is a crisis counsellor. So we actually held a Are You OK Day space. And it was really about holding space for vulnerability. And she shared some tips from her time at Lifeline about really, you know, how do you have those conversations when someone might say they aren't okay? And, you know, how do you hold that space? And, you know, it was a really humbling, you know, experience, that meeting. And so many people spoke up about their experiences. And I think it was a really awesome way that we just, you know, allowed space for people to be vulnerable. In terms of the kind of physical side of things, we launched ClassPass to our business, which gave them access to thousands of online virtual classes where they could dial into classes and do things together. So we had some people doing HIIT classes together, some people were like doing some aerobics classes together and all sorts of things. And we've got some step challenges and, you know, lots of physical things going around there. From a more practical side of things, we launched a flexibility playbook, and actually, you know, amidst everything that's happening, had a look about what that meant for our culture and what that meant moving forward, and how we could kind of take lessons from this time into building it into the way we work moving forward as well. So there are a few things that we've done, and there's been lots of fun things as well, like cooking classes and lunch and learns, and we're about to run a wellness month for Mental Health Month in October. We've got a different theme for each week. So we've got you know, a nutritional coach coming in, we've got a financial coach coming in. So we've just kind of looking at all the different facets of what it actually means to be mentally and physically healthy during this time.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's some really great initiatives there for sure. I have another question from Smita, who submitted her question beforehand. Thank you. So with COVID-19, we often find ourselves only mingling with colleagues if there's a work-related reason to do so. What has been successful for your businesses to encourage employees to connect outside of work? And I think, Merylee, what you were saying earlier of like, how do you make technology human? And it's really a conscious effort to keep connected on this side of things. But would love to hear some specific examples, tactics, tips on how you're really creating that engaged workplace and that human connection and fostering that. So Lucy, why don't I start with you on this one?
Okay, sure. Well, we're a pretty social mob at BPAY Group, and prior to COVID, we had a very, very active social community, which is you know, put on regular barbecues or Friday night drinks. We had a dance group, surprise, surprise, and that would meet weekly. And in fact, we performed the Charleston at last year's Christmas party, which was really fun. It was a 1920s theme. We also ran book clubs, running and soccer teams and so on. So pretty much, you know, a lot of things that a lot of organisations already do. And as you can imagine, once COVID hit, all that pretty much stopped, especially when the restrictions came in and group gatherings were banned. But we were really keen to drive connections so that people didn't feel isolated. So that was a really key driver for us. So we moved a lot of what we did in the office, such as our dance group and Friday night drinks, onto Zoom. You know, I have to say, we don't necessarily encourage our people to connect up with each other outside of working hours. But what we have been doing is to encourage them to connect with people in their local areas. So we have you know, a group in the Shire who meets up, or in a Westie group who potentially meets up and goes for coffee catch-ups or walk and talk meetings. All, of course, you know, whilst adhering to any restrictions that are in place. That's very important. Another thing that we did, and something that T actually sort of mentioned in what they were doing, what they're doing at SafetyCulture, is we purposely encourage people to participate in September this month. And I think about 80 to 85% of the organisation got involved. And we saw this as a great opportunity to get people up and away from their computers and to connect and particularly join a team of people that they don't normally work with. So my team, for example, goes for regular walk and talks We get out at least twice a week. We get on the phone and we just go for a walk and we talk. And the team I'm with people I don't normally work with. So I'm not seeing them as often as I would. I'm not seeing them as often as I would in the office because we're working remotely. And it's just been a wonderful opportunity to actually connect with, a group of people who I don't normally work with, to chat and to get to know them really well in that way.
Definitely.
Some of the stuff that we've been doing.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Terlya, I'd love to know, do you have any other examples, tactics, tips, tricks in really creating that connection? Because it's definitely a huge part of everyone's culture and it's come through at SafetyCulture as well.
Absolutely. First, I definitely like to recognize that creating connection in a virtual world is quite hard and something that we're learning about as we're going. I think one key learning that we've had over this time is that creating one big virtual space is really hard to create a sense of connection, and then people get left with feeling like it's just a bit more time on the screen. So we've really tried to take that learning and pivot a bit. And I think two key things that we did that I think worked really well over the last few months is we created an online pub, and it was essentially all these different rooms where people could go into. So there were smaller spaces for people to connect with around 10 to 15 people, so they were actually having authentic conversations rather than being in one big virtual room. And those rooms were everything from games rooms with like Pictionary and code names to wine tasting rooms and karaoke rooms and trivia rooms, so all types of things. So there was kind of something for everybody, and it kind of caused lots of little collisions of people to kind of come together that might not normally come together. So that was a really good initiative. I think the second thing we did was actually after we won the Best Place to Work award, we packed everybody a little custom box. And we decided to have a breakfast party to do something a little bit different. So it was in the morning and a little bit more inclusive. So we packed some like coffee and tea and gave everyone a little mug and gave them a little bingo card. So everyone came along to this little bingo party and got to have something physical as in the space there to feel almost connected to everybody. And then they all had a crossword, and we put everyone into little breakout rooms and they had to solve their crosswords. So I think, really the learning was around finding different bits and pieces to kind of help people come together, but not necessarily in too larger groups, but really trying to be creative around what spaces you're holding.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love bingo. So people are embracing, this flexibility to work from home, and many businesses are kind of in this either hybrid model or shifting back to the office a few days a week here and there. Mine is Victoria right now, wishing you guys all the best of luck if you're on this call. But would love to get some thoughts on investing in an office culture versus a remote working culture. Merylee, I would love to get your take on this.
Sure. Look, Nadine, I don't think it's an either or solution. I think both will continue to feature. Like most organisations, we've surveyed our staff and they've told us that, 2/3 of them would like to work from home about half of their time in the future. And I think we all have missed the human connection to some degree. And whilst Zoom and Teams have been really productive tools, it's not the same as running into someone, as I did a moment ago in the kitchen, where one of our team, Jose, is about to do his 40th city to surf. And we're all about to celebrate that with him virtually. And they're the moments that are difficult to recreate virtually. So I really think there's a role for the office to play in the future, and a role to give people the choice, to work in a way that works for them, works for their team, works for the customer, and works for the business. And the other thing I think we've got to be really aware of is that for many people, the office plays a really important part in their life. For some, it might be an escape from something, from perhaps an unsafe household, which has been something I'm sure has played on all of our minds during this period. Or it could be just a refuge from the kids to get some time away and get some quiet work done, or a place for you to have a dedicated space to work, because you might be living in a shared household and you don't have a dedicated working space at home, and you're cramped around a dining room table with others that you're working with. So I really think we need to be really careful in not assuming that the offices are only going to become some cool, awesome collaboration space, because the office means different things for different people. But I think we've had some really great lessons around, you know, how you can work remotely and still make things work. And for us personally, it's all about choice, and it's about how do we create the choice for people to work where, when, and in a way and time that works for them and works for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Terlya, I'd love to get your thoughts quickly on the same topic in terms of investing in office culture versus remote working culture as well.
Yeah, definitely would echo a lot of Merylee's comments. I think firstly, you know, we kind of need to recognize that the current working from home environments and the circumstances that we are in aren't necessarily the normal for working remotely. And my thoughts go out to all these people juggling homeschool or sharing houses with partners or roommates or any of those things. But I do love that this is a topic that's come up for conversation now, and it's something that we're really thinking about. And I think similar to Merylee, like, you know, we also sent out surveys, and I think what's really apparent is that everyone's having a different experience with it, and the office means different things for different people. And also similarly, you know, different work ways mean different things for different people. But what I do love is it's kind of given greater fluidity to work, and I'm really excited about how it will give people the ability to create space for things that matter for them in their lives, whether that's family or health or volunteering or friends or whatever that might be. But I think, you know, that's definitely more so what the future will look like greater fluidity. I think important things to invest about and think in is, you know, like this blurring of work barriers. So making sure you're really creating barriers and permission for people to kind of switch off to avoid those really long days and burnout. Definitely something to kind of think about and talk as an organisation. And just, yeah, what that means for your people and how you're going to build your office culture. Like, is it going to be a space for connection and community and collaboration, or what does that space mean for you and your people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Lucy, you hit on this a little bit earlier before, but I'd love to get a better insight in terms of employee well-being at your company, and if you could share some specifics around different programs and tactics and benefits and things like that.
Yeah, of course. So like most organisations, we've really upped our focus on physical, psychological and financial wellbeing over the last 6 months. And you know, one of the things that we do every year, and a lot of organisations do this, is provide employees with free flu shots. But this year we actually opened that up to all employees, contractors and their immediate family members, because we were really keen to let people know that, you know, we were thinking about their safety as COVID was sort of ramping up. We also gave everyone $500 to put towards the purchase of equipment to make their home setup more ergonomic. We relaxed our cashing out of annual leave requirements so that people who needed extra funds or were feeling a bit of financial stress could access some funds that way. And one of the things that I really loved, and this is an example of a cost neutral or free initiative, is we run weekly wellness workouts over Zoom. My team pull them together and run them for those people who want to come together to do things such as meditation. We had a session on laughing yoga. We've done similar to what T was actually mentioning, you know, cooking demonstrations, or just simply stopping for half an hour just to do a bit of artwork. So we're really keen to provide people with a 34 to 40 minute space in their week to stop and just invest in themselves. We've also had a very, very heavy focus on mental wellbeing and kicking off a program at the moment actually for both leaders and team members. And again, this is designed to lift awareness around mental health, but also to encourage everyone to look out for each other. And finally, over the past couple of months, we've been sending out what we call little care packages, you know, really small, inexpensive stuff, but essentially things that are designed to let our people know that we haven't forgotten about them, and that they're not alone and that we're here to support them.
That's great, and such a lovely surprise for people to open and get a little care pack. So last question, I know I'm conscious of time as well, but before we go to the Q&A with the audience, this topic is the theme around time-poor people teams, which I know we've probably all felt or are feeling. And people culture teams have become more vital than ever to their organizations. And we've heard how you guys have all driven that and been able to lead this change and transformation. by really putting your employees first and helping navigate these very challenging times. So, that being said, like, it's so critical we have this stage, but on the flip side, I'm also hearing and feeling that we're busier than ever. The normal, BAU or business as usual work has increased so many times, and you're spending more time putting out fires, or more conversations and focus on employees with stress, financial, personal challenges, things like that, as well as navigating an uncertain market, changing guidelines. It's never changing, having to get leaders and really helping pivot on decisions quickly. And in most cases, people and culture teams are already under-resourced as it is. So Merylee, I point this over to you in terms of, have you, found a balance in managing these priorities while you're juggling, time poor teams, being under-resourced, fighting fires, you're still working on it, how are you doing all the things?
Look, it's been a crazy period. So if it's not, if your regular plan for the year isn't enough, I guess you pile on video calls from the time you log on to the time you go off, and it can be really hard to find 5 minutes. So we did pause, and it was really clear to our people that even something as simple as making yourself some lunch when there's no cafe nearby, or taking a toilet break was getting really difficult. So we've done a couple of things. We have completely transformed our meeting culture during this period. People are working longer hours, and we affectionately dubbed the other pandemic being meeting mania, and we felt we needed to stop that. So we've now shifted to no meeting is more than either 20 minutes or 45 minutes, and that's enough, so everyone gets a break to recover. And there's no multitasking. If you're on a call, be present. Otherwise, feel free to dial out. If you don't need to be on this call because there's something more important you could be doing, or you're not required to contribute, then don't attend. And a bit like Lucy mentioned earlier, we've introduced walking meetings and other ways for people to connect, and just be okay to not be on video sometimes. Make a old-fashioned phone call. We've also, really had to adjust plans, but we've looked at ourselves as well and made sure that we've looked after ourselves. So we had our EAP provider, for example, run some proactive phone calls to all of our team to really just say, are you okay? Because we don't often think about picking up the phone and looking after ourselves when we're looking after everyone else. And we've also introduced what we call one simple thing. And that's where we ask every employee in their performance plan to detail one simple thing that you're going to do to look after your well-being. And that's every person. And to share it with your team, certainly it's in your performance plan, so it's shared with your manager, and we're then responsible for keeping each other to account on that. So it might be some form of exercise, or doing something with your kids, or some daily meditation to participate in something that you love. But I really think there's been an interesting period to enable people to look after each other. And one of my favourites is one of the children, Declan, of one of our team members, has created an interactive Minecraft world for all the other kids of Interactive to join. And it's just one example of where kids, particularly that are at home learning from home in Melbourne, can dial out for a moment and give mum and dad a break as well.
That's awesome. I'm going to jump to Q&A. I know we are at 1:30, so if people have to drop off, that's okay. There's going to be a recording. But here is, just doing a little pivot on the back end. But to give you guys a couple seconds I know there's been questions coming in throughout the session. And so there's one question that's come up from Jairus, and I hope I got your name right. And the question is, has there been any tricky examples of where the culture and resilience you're trying to drive has come head to head with financial pressures? So I'm not sure who would like to jump into this one, but the mic is open.
I'm happy to start, and I
Yeah.
should have predicted if someone's going to ask a tricky question, it would be Jairus. So well done, Jairus. I think the tech sector and us particularly, we've been really fortunate. You know, our business has really I think we're designed to weather a storm. So we've been fortunate enough that we haven't had any really tricky situations. You know, we've kept full employment. We've had some people that have not been able to work. So, for example, our barista couldn't come to the office, and we've continued to pay them despite the fact that they couldn't work. But I think it's not over, and you know, we've really made sure that we've been very prudent in the way that we've managed our cost base. Most organisations, you know, you've had incredible savings on travel. We haven't travelled for the last 6 months. We've had far less catering costs than we've ever had, but certainly your people costs and your power and your property and those big costs that come into a business continue. So. You know, there's no doubt that as the government subsidies start to taper off, we will undoubtedly see some pressures for organisations, and we are thinking about things like how do we do Christmas in not only a virtual way, but a way that people really feel that they're celebrated and is appropriate for a great place to work, but is equally you know, it won't be the big bang parties that we've done because we expect restrictions will prevent that from happening. So I think the more challenging times for us to think about are yet to come. So I'm sorry, Jairus, I don't have anything in particular that we've struggled through to date, but maybe Lucy or T do.
Yeah, look, no, we're like you, Merylee. We've been in an unfortunate position, and as I mentioned, we've paid people $500 to help towards the setup of a home workspace. And like you, we've had savings because we're not in the office, so we're not spending money on fruit and milk and bread and spreads and, you know, all those sorts of things. And so that has given us the flexibility to actually invest more in our people when we're working remotely. But time will tell because we just don't know how tough it's going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo what they said as well. And, you know, I think a lot of the time with resilience, a lot of things that you can do are behavioral and training and aren't necessarily always based in financial commitments as well. So it's just, you know, to be creative in terms of what you're actually doing with resilience. And a lot of those things can be, you know, without a budget as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I know we are 4 minutes over. Do we want one more question, or we can go to takeaways? I think we'll go to takeaways. So I'd love to get your thoughts. If there's any advice, key points, takeaways that you'd love to leave the audience with. Why don't we start with you, Merylee?
Look, I think for me, it's get clear on your why. You know, why do you exist?
Mm-hmm.
What's your purpose? And just passionately pursue that and make sure that you work for a business that is aligned to your purpose. Life's too short to do anything but. And if you do that, then you're really passionate and your job's really easy. And I think finally, for particularly this period that we've all been through, just be really kind to yourself.
Yeah, that's great. Terlya, how about you?
Yes, I love that. Key takeaway. Mine was going to be something similar, but I'll do a bit of pivot. I think another key takeaway for me, and you know, through my learnings, is that you can always find inspiration with your people. So I think be relentless in listening to your people and your customers. You know, really listen to learn and understand, and invite people to participate and co-create sometimes, rather than, you know, just jumping in and doing. So you'll really get a sense of what you should do and what you should build. And yeah, I think that's probably my key takeaway for everybody.
Yeah, that's perfect. How about you, Lucy?
Great, I'm last, and what T and Merylee said is pretty much what I was going to say. But there's one thing, just given that we don't know what the future holds in terms of the financial situation and the impacts on our businesses, just remember, don't assume you have to spend big money to make a real difference. There are lots of things that you can do day to day that will be impactful and cost nothing. So it's just about getting creative and talking to your people about what can be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, ladies, well, thank you so much. This has been a really informative session, and I know there's been a ton of questions We'll try and address those at a later time because we are over time. But again, thank you for sharing all your insights and spending your time with us today. Big thanks to the audience and all your questions and for joining us, and those who are going to be watching at another time, thank you. And ultimately, this Building a Culture of Resilience has been a really great session, and also I know it's been a really hard year, so be kind to yourself. Everyone have a good day, and we'll see you guys the next time.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nadine.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.